Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Justin and the Food Entrepreneurs Podcast. I'm Justin Bizzarro. I'm your host, and today I have with me my lovely and understanding significant other and co-host, Deborah Michas.
Hello.
And today we'll be interviewing Jeremy and Nicole Kurland of the Allergy-Free Baking Company. How are you guys doing today?
Great, thank you.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here.
And so tell us a little bit about yourselves and how you got into the food business.
So originally we're chiropractors. We met in chiropractic school and got married, had some kids, and moved to Colorado from New Jersey and practiced a little bit here. And then as we had kids, I stayed home and he continued to practice. I've always been obsessed with food. Wrote a cookbook years ago called Naturally Nutritious and loved to bake, loved to cook. And in our chiropractic clinic, we would do food nights, food recipe nights, things like that. And then as his kids got older, I stayed home. He was practicing, and we realized that our kids had some allergies. And when we moved to Ken Carroll, one of my very good friends' son has severe allergies, and I started actually specifically baking for him out of my home. So I did the cottage industry laws and baked for 3 years out of my house. And baked for him, and the word got out, and one of our sons, our oldest son, is anaphylactic to nuts. My youngest son is celiac. So in that vein, I started doing all of my stuff gluten-free and nut-free. And the friend's son that I started baking for, like I said, the word spread like wildfire, so I would get requests for, I started with muffins and cookies, and then it turned into, do you think you could do bagels? And do you think you could do breads? And do you think you could do cupcakes? And so it turned into, now my cupcakes are gluten-free, nut-free, soy-free, dairy-free, and egg-free to try to cover as many bases as possible. Just started baking for kids that had allergies and that were left out at the parties and left out at school and couldn't eat any of the fun stuff. And I tried to replace that with stuff so they felt included.
So at what point did you take it from it being a hobby and for your friends, for kids that you knew, to saying, hey, we should really take this broader and make it a company?
Well, the friend that I started baking for, she said, you should turn this into a business. And I went, I'm just a mom. I'm just a stay-at-home mom who loves to bake, who's raising some kids. And it got so big that I had taken over every freezer in the house, the garage, the living room, the dining room, the entire kitchen, madhouse, trying to bake during the day and get ready for the kids to come home after school. And, it got crazy. So I said to Jeremy, so I either have to close this down or I need a facility because I can't do this. And all my family was going crazy too with everything everywhere, packaging and labeling, and it was crazy. So I started looking a couple years ago, and we opened up our facility close to home, so it's easy to get to and easy, access to get to the kids if we need to. 2 years ago, it'll be in July, that we opened up just a small shop, just 1,000 square foot shop to start producing.
And so are you guys still doing all your own production, or do you do all your own production? So you have your own ovens and...
We have a couple ovens, and it was just, I literally started this saying, you know what, I don't even need employees. I'm just going to go in and bake, and I'm just going to sell frozen stuff, and I'm going to open at 10 after the kids go to school, and I'll be home before they get home. And then we opened the doors, and it got a little nuts really quick. So I hired a couple employees, and then Jeremy was still working as a chiropractor, and he started helping more and more, doing double duty. And then he, about 6 months ago, came over full time.
Oh, so you guys don't do any chiropractic anymore?
No chiropracting right now.
If that's even the right term, I don't even know. I just turned it into a verb, yeah. You can create words these days, I hear. So social media gave us the ability to do that. But so tell us a little bit about that. I mean, that's a big step. So both of you are now fully into the business, and how's that going? And both of you full-time, there was one person in charge, and now there's both of you working day-to-day. How do you guys work through that?
It takes a while to get used to. Having an easy life as a chiropractor and being a baker, we could have picked an easier profession, I think. It's a lot of hours, but like she said, everything that comes out of that bakery is made by us right now. That's the first phase of it, I guess.
And so when you were practicing chiropractics, did you guys work together then and have your own business, or was it something you guys did separately? Is this your first venture at a business together?
No, we started our practice together. We graduated in 1998, which is kind of a long time ago. So it's been 20 years in practice. We started in New Jersey. We quickly realized we didn't like living in New Jersey and moved to Colorado. And we had our first practice here together in 2001. And so we've had a few practices, moved from the north end of Denver down to the south end. And so after the kids, I was practicing alone for, I don't know, the last decade.
10 years.
Yeah. So then we're back together again. I like working with my wife.
Yeah, that's awesome.
We work well together. We really do. And we at the bakery, it's one of us is there all the time, and it's it's not just selling frozen. People come in and want fresh bread or fresh muffins. So then we bake more and more fresh every day, and I love getting up early, and I can't stay up late. So I'll get there super early and just do all the fresh baking, and then we try to, a couple employees come in and we do shift, and then so I open every day, he closes every day, and it works out great. And with that, and trying to balance the family and all that kind of stuff.
So how did you guys come to the decision to unify and go straight into this business and leave behind the chiropractics? How did you get to that decision? Because I would imagine both have lucrative sides to it, but it also keeps you divided as a family. And so what was the deciding factor?
Well, she said she was moving forward with this, and I asked her if she really understood what that meant to our life, to our family. And so when we started, like she said, I was doing both.
Right.
That was really hard, actually, to serve two masters in that, and it was a lot of hours, and so it just got less and less on the chiropractic side. Now I'm still pretty passionate about what we did with chiropractic, or what I was doing rather, more of a functional movement based thing. I see all this CrossFit gear and whatnot, and so I love movement, and I really love sort of the nutritional aspects of a biohacking kind of deal. And so I read that stuff every day. I watch that stuff all the time. We practice it every day. I'm teaching it to my children. And so the health part of it is a pretty neat mixture of the chiropractic background with our heavy background in nutrition, and now having an allergy, free baking company. So when people come in, and it's their first time in, they're happy to be there, their kid's never been in a bakery, and they're asking about these different food allergies. We have a pretty solid knowledge base, a lot more than just, somebody that works at the bakery at Safeway or something like that. So we can sit there and talk about things in a pretty heady sort of way.
It's very seldom that I hear an allergy that I haven't heard of before, and that's why I take so much stuff out of the food and still try to make it delicious, because I try to cover as many bases as possible, just to try to, so that everyone's included and everyone can enjoy. And we have tears of joy often when they bite into a bagel, or they realize that their son can actually eat that cupcake and haven't had a cupcake in 15 years, or
right.
So it's really rewarding.
Oh, I'm sure. And I mean, at what point were you, when you started realizing your own children had limitations in terms of what they could eat? Because, did you yourselves and your family have to go through a period of, I used to have horrible allergies, and thank God I don't have them anymore, but it was very traumatic. And I used to have to be sent to the hospital and given shots of epinephrine and all sorts of stuff. So I definitely know the emotional side of that. And I don't know if you guys had to experience that at some level, and that started the whole thing, or if you were already baking, and then did your kids ever have to endure that? Or
well, we found out when my oldest son was probably 6, that's when we found out he was anaphylactic to nuts through a couple very scary situations.
Right.
So we knew that was going on, and then I actually realized I had major problems with gluten before my youngest son. We realized he did as well. My sister is celiac. We know it's in the family. Mm-hmm. And then I started, like I said, baking for that other kid, my friend's son. So I kind of got used to baking without the gluten and without the dairy and all that kind of stuff, and eggs. And so it was really actually an easy transition. And I'm a food obsessor, a recipe obsessor, a tweaker. So I've done that my whole life. Food book, cookbook collector. So I would go and I'm like, they really want this, but I need to tweak this and take this out and add this in. And my son, especially my youngest, would say, I really want to eat this. Like we'd go to a store and I'd say, you can't eat that, but I will create that for you. So
That's
I would
awesome.
spend months, I probably made our bagel recipe 30 times. He's from New Jersey, so he'd say, nope, too chewy, too soft, too dry.
he has an opinion.
So it's perfect, and I won't sell it until we're really, really happy with it. But we have a lemon loaf that's similar to Starbucks that sells really well because people that are gluten-free can't eat the Starbucks lemon loaf, or, like I said, cupcakes that don't have any eggs or gluten. And
Right.
yeah. So but there was a period of adjustment for sure, but my kids eat really well, and they get lots of fun treats.
Right.
And, they don't miss out on too much just because they have allergies.
Well, and baking's just definitely an interesting thing. I mean, I feel like cooking, you can kind of toss a little this, toss a little that, but baking is a science for sure. And like if you need stuff to rise, or it is a whole different deal, And so, I have tons of respect for what you guys do. Even just in making cookies, we laugh in our house. We love it when our cookies come out super flat, but a lot of people like them puffy. And, it's just this interesting thing. And, it's like, which is the part that makes it do that? Because we use the same recipe that's on the bag, but some come out puffy and some come out flat. And so it's just this funny thing. And I think it has to do with the sequence of how we do it or how much we melt our butter. I still don't really know, but it's just one of these things that it's definitely a science. And so, to have that consistency is huge. So tons of credit to you guys for that.
That was a big transition for me. I'm not a baker. I was never a baker. I baked one cake for her birthday one time out of a Betty Crocker box or something like
Right.
that. And so I come in, one day and it's the same thing that I've made 100 times. And I'm like, why is this all messed up? And maybe because it's cloudy today. I don't know.
There's always little adjustments that need to happen, but now I'm at the point where I can tell if something's going wrong and I can try to fix it, and then sometimes it doesn't work, but we don't sell it if it doesn't work,
Right.
So we're just a small business I love it. I absolutely love it. It's a lot of hours. It's a lot of time, but we try to balance that with spending time with the kids and going to our cabin when we can, and our kids are involved in sports, but if I get there early and work hard and then he closes up, it seems to work out all right.
Yeah, I want to make a quick footnote. You mentioned the CrossFit stuff around, so the audience can visualize this. Deborah and I have a CrossFit gym in our 4-car garage, and then I've sort of taken over part of it to build the studio here, if you want to call it a studio. It's, as every entrepreneur does, that we started in our garage. And but I just want everyone to visualize that. The other part I want to talk about is, as a company, we do over 20 million meals a year for food, but we don't actually touch baking that much. We actually buy in the breads and buy in because it is such a science, and it is something that's hard to get consistent across the board, that we are very careful about what we bake and don't bake because of the consistency and needing the consistency across the board and the way we do business. And so, I just want to emphasize the science and the ability and the care that you guys really have to put in to make each recipe exact or taste the same or whatever, and baking is a whole different ball game. And so we definitely know that, and Deborah's the baker. I don't even touch baking in this house, and I'll cook and do whatever else, but not baking for sure. And then my last point is the allergy-free thing. So I also suffer from gluten allergy. My hands will literally peel right off the skin, and it's interesting because we'll go to Europe a lot, and I can have gluten there, and I have no reaction. And it's the strangest thing, but I eat gluten here. If you start to notice my hands start peeling, they get dry, my skin gets reactions, I feel like crap. That's the major one. It really drags me down. So one of the reasons I really liked what I saw and reached out to you guys on social media to be on the podcast was because exactly that, because there aren't many people people are saying they're doing, but they're not really getting it, and they're not really getting the whole encompassing thing where it's nuts. Let's go totally allergy free and let's make it good, because I can tell you, I eat bread and it falls to pieces, and it's the one of those things that drive me absolutely nuts. And I love sandwiches; they're like my favorite meal of all time, and I love making them. But the problem is I can't get bread that falls apart. So I'm going to have to come try your bread. So tell us a little bit about your process. You talked about experimenting, but in 50 recipes. So how do you gain new items? Is it something you just see, like, we're going to add this? Is your store open for people to just walk in, and how do they get your product? And then how can they find you on social media? And again, the store, what's the address? So
Those were a lot of questions.
yeah, I know. I have a lot.
Thinking the same thing.
Yes, we have a storefront where people can just walk in and get fresh goods. We are available in some local coffee shops as well, in Atlas Coffee and Bean Foster's.
So our bakery is in Morrison, Colorado, right off of Quincy Avenue, over by Red Rocks concert. And the storefront is, we're not open like a 7-Eleven. We're trying to be humans and parents and all that. But as far as coming up with the ideas for things, we get like it was just St. Patrick's Day. And so we know that going into St. Patrick's Day, people are going to want certain things. They're going to want Irish green themed cupcakes. And the new product was an Irish soda bread that she put together. And so she's, spending weeks working on this recipe. Here, taste this. How's that? I said, I don't even think I've ever eaten Irish soda bread. So then we had to go around to local other stores and buy Irish soda bread. Now, mostly it was all full of gluten. Ours is going to be, gluten-free. And we started tasting these different soda breads, and I said, look, you've nailed it here, and yours is better than all of them that are all glutified. So, I don't know, that's part of her process, but she's always sitting in front of her computer. She's sitting in front of her old school notebook and writing 100 pages of notes. I'm like, what are you doing? She's like, working on recipes.
I get a recipe and then I tweak it and then I make it and this doesn't work, so then I tweak it again and I rewrite it. I'm all about handwriting and crossing things out. And when it's next is going to be Easter, so then what am I going to do for Easter? Are we doing gluten-free, dairy-free sugar cookie cutouts in the shape of bunny rabbits? I don't know until it's a couple weeks before, but that's part of the exciting process, because we have our staples that certainly sell well. We have to have our bagels, we have to have certain muffins and cookies, but then that's the creative thing that almost every month there's some kind of holiday, some kind of theme. We constantly have questions on our Facebook page, Allergy Free Baking Company Facebook page, or our website asking, could you make this, or will you do this, or what are you going to do that's fun for Easter?
Right.
So then it kind of gets the creative juices flowing, and I just start looking for recipes and what would be fun, and that's how it keeps it creative.
And then do you keep kind of that whole list so that next year when you come around and it's Easter again, and then you can be like, okay, these were our top sellers, so those ones you keep, and the ones that maybe weren't top sellers, you're like, okay, I'll replace that one type of...
Oh, I'm so old school that I actually have a binder.
I do too.
I have it. I write all my recipes down, and then I transfer them to my computer. I print them out, and I carry a binder around me like it's,
Bible.
Like it's crazy, and I won't go anywhere without it. And I have backups of everything, but then I can tweak things on there. And yes, if it's a good seller or I really love a recipe, that goes into it has to be perfect to make it into the binder. And I literally carry it from work to home and home to work every day.
I love it.
So what are your best sellers that you guys actually go to that sell well every day?
We do fresh cinnamon rolls every Saturday morning. Gluten-free, nut-free, dairy-free, soy-free, egg-free cinnamon rolls.
Looks like we're going to Morrison this weekend.
Come early.
Yeah, come early, we sell out. We try to do fresh soft pretzels on Friday afternoons. We have pumpkin crunch muffins and lemon loaf and lemon blueberry muffins that sell really well. Our bagels are killer, so they sell out all the time. Our dairy-free, gluten-free, nut-free fudge brownies are amazing. So there's certain things that, now we're at the point where people are disappointed, like, what, you don't have any brownies? So we try to keep certain things in stock, and then there's other things that try to come up with a new cookie that might just be random or whatever. But yeah, the brownies, our breads, our cinnamon rolls, those are all really good sellers.
And so do you guys, as you look to the future, what are kind of the growth things you're interested in? My mind's going crazy of all the different things I can imagine for you, but, I don't want to put my stuff on you.
Great. If you could send me a list, that would be fantastic.
Okay, great.
No, so how do you scale something like this? There's a lot of different things. Do you open multiple locations? Do you franchise it out? Do you try to, get one or two products into grocery stores or Whole Foods or natural grocers? We have no background in this whatsoever. If you said, I can't get off the floor, my back hurts, I'm your guy. But you say, how are we going to scale this bakery? And it's hard because when you look at commissaries or co-packers, our facilities is unique in that there's never gluten or never a nut in the facility. That's why people, parents in particular, trust us. They understand. It's when you understand the food allergy or the autoimmune thing, it's important. Like you said earlier, if I eat gluten, I'm not doing good, but I can eat it when I go to Europe. Our facility is clean, and people know that. We know how important it is. Anaphylactic reactions to food are too serious to not take seriously.
Yeah, I mean, if you don't mind, I'm going to jump in for a second. I mean, so we have large facilities, and to be gluten-free, you can have your facility, this is just for the audience so they know, you can have a facility that is certified as gluten-free, and then you can literally put a stamp on every product you have as certified gluten-free. So when you go to the grocery store and it says gluten-free, that means its ingredients are gluten-free. It does not mean that it's coming from a certified gluten-free facility, nor is that product certified. So if we were to produce in one of our facilities a certified gluten-free product, the only way we can do it is every single batch we make, considering there is gluten in the facility, that means it goes through the HVAC systems. You can't just get rid of it. There might be chicken noodle soup with noodles in it that have gluten in it being boiled in a kettle. So in order for us to have a certified gluten-free product, every batch has to be tested, and it goes down to parts per million. So it's a super high threshold because people with celiac, it's that imperative that it be that stringent. So when you guys say that there is no gluten in your building, I mean, just curious, have you guys had your facility certified as certified gluten-free?
No, we haven't.
You might want to do that just because then you can literally stamp every single product you have as certified gluten-free. And so just a little tidbit, but also for the audience so they know that, because we've had people come to us wanting us to co-package for them, and if it needs to be certified gluten-free, it doesn't make any sense for us to do that for them because the cost of testing every single batch is cost prohibitive to the end user, to them, to us, to everyone. So anyway, that might be a great thing for you guys to go ahead and have done, because it's a one-time cost, an annual thing that you just maintain and show all of that. But
yeah, and we've never done it on a podcast, but there's a little bit of one of those things, and I'm just going to ask questions, and we don't need answers, but just things to think about, because I have been in restaurants and food trucks, and we've had various subsidiaries and stuff like that over the years. But one of the problems with growth is how do you stay true to yourself, because you have all these unique things you do every holiday. So that's one. How do you stay true to you guys and the authenticity that you guys put out there? And that's a question that anyone should ask themselves when they grow a business, because I know from our own perspectives, how do you keep that culture? And then if you two are the people behind it as the entrepreneurs, how do you get other people to do it the way you do it? Because no one's ever going to do it the way or care about you the way you care about you and your products and all of that. And we run into that a lot in co-packaging. We, in our own business, we're like, you have to produce it to our employees. You have to produce it the way the food entrepreneur coming to us wants it done and co-package it. Like they're putting their heart and soul to it. You have to feel what it's like to be them in order to make it. And I hate to say it, but love needs to be put in the food. And it really is there because these people built it through love. And so it's hard to do that. And the other thing is, just on Deborah's topic, is there really aren't any, it's very few and far between facilities that are all completely allergy free. Like we said, we can certify it with testing, but to actually have a door and actually have a location, or a place, I don't know why I said door, that has nothing related to allergies. I mean, there might be opportunity there. I don't know, where you just have a facility and people come to you, have you also co-package or stuff, because I don't know, but just throwing out brainstorm ideas, and you guys, it's yours, do what you want, but the opportunity there, like Deborah said, in our business, and we see commissaries all the time, there's really no one out there anymore that's completely allergy free in their facility. So I don't know, just wanted to throw that out there for the audience. My next question is this, is we talked a little bit about growth, and we talked a little bit about what that means for you guys, but and we talked about your most popular items. So what do you feel like your next steps have to be in the near future, and what are some of the things that you've had success in so far in growing the business? I mean, do you market? I mean, is social media your best platform? I mean, things like that.
We've really grown. I try to explain to Nicole, this is not how people open a business. You just don't hang your shingle, turn the open light on, and all of a sudden people flock to you and you're their happy place every day. It's not usually how it works. So I don't think we've spent $5 on marketing. We have an amazing, we just started posting things. We'd post pictures, or we'd make quirky little videos, and people really liked it.
And every morning, whatever I bake fresh, I take a picture of, try to take a creative picture of, and send it to our great marketing girl.
So we were doing it on our own. We were not very good at it, but it was still working. And then just a patron of the bakery sort of does that for a living, and she took it over. And so she was like maybe our first employee, second employee. And her name, Jackie. She does an amazing job. Like, she is always on it. And I don't have an Instagram account. I'd never been on Instagram. And she's like, you need to be on Instagram. I'm like, if you can make that happen, that'd be great. And so she's grown this following by a lot of food bloggers will contact us, and then sort of have this little relationship where we'll get them some stuff. They write about it. I mean, it's really grown fantastically just through social media. If we didn't, I guess that's our only real.
That's really, and then word of mouth, And Jackie entered us. She's always looking for ways to, promote us. So she entered us into the best allergy friendly bakery in the 5280 Colorado Parent Magazine. So she entered us into that, and then asked people to vote. So we won best allergy friendly bakery last year in our first year in business. So that was exciting.
That's huge.
Yeah, that's amazing. There's so many of those little things that have come out that, we do Flavor Georgia in Georgia and see people win. But here at the 5280 magazine, we just did Early Bird Restaurant, and they were the best waffles in Denver. But the opportunities like that are huge. And I think social media, and I think we have a lot of people that come on the podcast, while they have someone pushing their social media, they don't actually spend any money on marketing and advertising in newspapers anymore. And it's free and it's out there. So why spend excessive amount of money on marketing when really, if you can get people to buy in and invest on social media, they sort of emotionally tie in. And then what you guys are doing, it's not common to have a completely gluten-free, nut-free, soy-free, milk, dairy-free, I think you said also. I can't name them all, but I'll twist my tongue. But I think it's really cool that you guys are doing it, and it's definitely something that attracted me to you guys to ask you is how well the social media is done, and obviously what you're doing with your products. So like I mentioned earlier, so as a family, how do you have 3 children, I believe you said, and now both of you are full-time in the business. So do you have a way, and one opens and one closes? What are your business hours? I guess is the first part of the question. But the second part is how do you make sure you guys have that time together, make sure your kids still can make it to all their sports practices we talked about and school and all of that? So how do you juggle that as 2 entrepreneurs? Obviously you work well together, and the chemistry is great. We can see it across the room here on your microphones. But how do you juggle all of that and succeed?
Well, that's the hard part. The family dynamic definitely suffered in the beginning. We would come home when we first opened, and the production compared to what we do now was much less, and we would just collapse on the floor. Like, our kid would take a picture of us. We're both asleep. He's like, it's 6:30.
6:30. I passed out. I lost. I'm a little bit of a control freak, and that's why I like to be in charge of everything at the bakery and make sure everything's good. And I was a control freak at home, and I would get home and I didn't know homework was due. I stopped making lunches. I made breakfast every day and made kids lunch every day and ran everything and did all the dentists, and all of a sudden he has to take over in the mornings, and I'm going in early, and it was a major life shift. Jeremy always says that I'm a ready, fire, aim kind of girl, because I jump in head first, and then I'm like, oh, I should have thought about that a little bit better. And that's what I did with the bakery, and it's worked out great, but it really was an entire shift for the entire family. So every day I have to look at the schedule. So-and-so has a dentist appointment, we've got 2 lacrosse games and a track practice and a football thing, and can you do this, and I'll do this, and it's definitely a balance, for sure.
But it's gotten better. We have a cabin down in the mountains, and we used to go a lot. And then this last year we haven't gone that much, but we now just plan things. We plan on going. Like, we're going to go for spring break. We're going to close the bakery, right, for 3 or 4 days. We tell all the client base, through social media. And largely, they're very understanding and encouraging that, because it is a personality kind of based thing. People know us. We know them. We use a lot of first names when people walk into the bakery. And so if we say, hey, we're going to be closed, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday next week, we're going to go hang out with the kids. Most everybody has their own kids, or their kids are grown, and they're like, you need to go do that. You guys are always here. So we really appreciate that about our clientele, is that they understand that, we have a young family, and nothing's worth not spending time with my family.
And like you said, we're not a Safeway, we're not a 7-Eleven. So we have kind of funky hours. We open at 11 on Tuesdays and Fridays. We close at 5:30 those days, and then we're open 9 to 4 Wednesday, Thursday, 9 to 1 on Saturday. But we also have to balance that and the kids, and hope that people are understanding when we say, look, we're actually going to change. We're going to have some summer hours, or we're going to close for a couple days to try to balance this out, because we burn out, because we are a small business and we just do all the work, with our employees. But we're a small family-run business.
Do you guys have online sales? Can people buy your stuff online?
No, we haven't figured out. I haven't figured out how to even produce enough to be able to ship it. I mean, we have people that come from all over the country, and that we're on their list of places to stop, which is very cool. But in order to ship it or produce it, we haven't figured out the packaging. We just haven't figured out how to ship stuff yet. Yeah, not sure what we're going to do.
We're in a few local coffee shops and restaurants that share some of our products, so that's actually a big burden on us, because we have to produce a lot for them. And then special orders for cupcakes and things like that for birthdays, and then just your daily production. But interesting, what she just said, as a destination, we get people, our stuff has been shipped from Kansas to Canada to Iceland, right? It was Iceland. Somebody
That's cool.
came in, they're like, will you ship it? I'm like, no, but you can ship it there.
Right.
Had people bring an entire suitcase in and then just buy the products and ship.
Well, it's huge. Yeah. I mean, for people who need these I shouldn't say need, because you can live without baked goods, but it sure does change the quality of life, right?
Yeah.
Let's be honest, if you can't eat a cookie, I mean, cookies are my favorite snack, and if I couldn't eat cookies, that would be really sad.
My life would be miserable if Deborah couldn't eat cookies.
It's true. So I can see why people do that. I mean, and that's why I ask a little bit, in terms of growth. I mean, and I think when you guys look at that, because you're saying, oh, well, I'd love your ideas, but I think the ultimate thing is you have to start with, what is it you want from it? You know what I mean? What is the goal that works for you guys and your family? And what is it you want? And then from there, you can kind of tailor what that looks like, who your clients are, how big you get, how, what does that look like? I mean, I definitely had a point in my life when I was looking at growth in a company I had, and it meant, I was like, well, what's the upside? I mean, it was going to mean a lot of downsides, but I was like, what's the upside? And the upside, the things that were there for me weren't important to me. And so I chose not to grow, at that point in my life, because my kids were younger at that point. So, you really have to do things that make sense for you. And so, that's why I'm like, hey, what is it you're thinking? But, and then the growth model, that's just, you can figure it out. It's a logical step. But first, I think you start out what works for you guys and your family.
Right. And as we have more, we love being in coffee shops, and we love being able to say, you can go to Atlas Coffee, or like you said, Bean Foster's, or there's a restaurant in Morrison, Bizzarro, that carries our bread, or 5280, 5281. Right. And that's great. And as we've gotten used to that, we weren't used to it at first, and we were producing all this more stuff. And like you said, it was a burden because we didn't know how to handle it. And then as we get more coffee shops and we've streamlined our systems, it's become much, much easier. So adding more coffee shops could be a growth, now that we've gotten used to that, or more restaurants. We don't really know what the future holds at this point, really.
Well, and baked goods, it adds a whole new element, right? Because you have a shelf life issue, right?
Yes.
And so, but if you froze it, I mean, and each one has its own, some things freeze better than others. And so kind of looking at that. So some items, if you went straight from production into a freezer, that could work, but then...
that is how all of our stuff freezes great. And so that for people that are gluten-free, we get a lot of mountain people that come down from Conifer and Bailey and Crested Butte even.
Right.
And, they buy a bunch of stuff and then they keep it in their freezer. So all of our stuff does freeze well. But then, when you're in the coffee shop, I think it's over at Bean Foster's in Golden. They're going to heat up a scone for somebody, or, and it's just like you have a fresh baked scone.
Right. Well, that was the original model. Everything I made it and then I froze it. So then originally that was, we have 2 freezers in the front that are self-serve freezers. So we bake things, and some things go directly into the freezer. Some things get set out as fresh. But I don't use any preservatives, chemicals, artificial colors, sweeteners, nothing like that. So it is actually better to freeze it, and it maintains the freshness. And then you thaw it on your counter, or you thaw it in the microwave or oven, and it's just like it was fresh.
So how did you get the green color then for St. Patrick's Day without any artificial coloring?
It's not exactly the most vibrant green that you're probably picturing in your mind's eye.
So I use all organic coloring. So I spend time mixing my blue and my yellow like a chemistry project to get a nice color of green. Or if something is pink in the bakery, it's because it has cherries or strawberries, or all the sprinkles I would use on cupcakes are naturally flavored with beet juice or turmeric or whatever it is. So I just refuse to compromise on the quality of the ingredients and how it looks and how it tastes, and no matter how much time or effort goes into it.
The beet juice thing, that's hysterical. When my kids were little, I was, I think it was Jerry Seinfeld's wife. I think she came out with a cookbook.
Yep.
And she was saying how you could sneak vegetables in and your kids wouldn't know. And so I made pancakes that had beets in it. And they're like, oh, it's, she's like saying, oh, it's so great. And they're pink and whatever. My kids were like, it did not go over well. They were like 100% knew there were beets in it. They were like, no, that's disgusting.
Yeah. Our goal is that it tastes so good that you could serve it at a dinner party and not even tell people it's gluten-free or dairy-free, that everybody can eat it and everybody can enjoy it. Everybody's eating the same food, and there's not, some kid in the corner eating a rice cake because he can't have the cupcakes. We just want everybody to enjoy the same thing and not be, we have people that literally will walk in and say, ugh, your whole store's gluten-free, gross. And they'll walk out and I'll say, no, just try a brownie or try a cookie because I really think you like it. And if you don't like it, you can tell me. I'm okay with that. Right. So we want everything to taste delicious and everybody to enjoy.
It's just going to be hard to get a bright neon blue cupcake at our place.
That's not something you're going to have.
No.
Yeah, I don't do cakes. I don't do themes. I don't do Princess or Barbie or Ninja Turtle, anything like that. I just focus on the basics.
Oh, I almost cried there when she said she didn't do Ninja Turtles.
He is a fan.
No,
sure.
But I think it is a good thing. And just so the audience know, beets are actually a great producer of sugar naturally and giving a sugar flavor. I assume that's how you're using it with when you mentioned the sprinkles and things like that it has a sugary taste to it.
Well, the beet juice gives it the color.
Yeah.
Color.
Yeah.
That's the natural red.
Yeah,
okay.
The natural red or the pinks or yellows. Yeah, I don't try to not sneaking spinach into the brownies. I'm not sneaking beets into the bundt cakes or anything like that. Just natural.
Yeah, we had a customer, and the only reason I brought us, we had a customer who were they brownies? They were brownies, and they used beet sugar and beets, but the brownies turned out red, which made them a little bit weird, but they did taste good and taste like sugar. Deborah didn't like them. I love them, but that's a whole different thing. So, and I don't have a sweet tooth like Deborah does, so there is a difference there. I'm a whole foods meals type of person, and I just don't go that direction. Also why I picked you guys to be on the podcast. I'm like, we need to go there, so I can get Deborah to go places when I bring them on the podcast. So
you need to head west on Mineral, come over to Morrison and try our brownies.
I definitely will. I am a big fan of sweets. Yeah,
I think
sweets are friends.
A little adventure this weekend and try those cinnamon rolls. And so I want to touch on the coloring a little bit. So tell us a little bit more about that. I mean, there's a lot of colors in the color palettes and why it may not be vibrant. I think it's an interesting topic. So it's like blueberries make the blue and beets make the red, and then how do you get a yellow that you mix with the blue to get a green? And so do you just concentrate on the primary colors then and then mix from there like you're an artist?
Well, so there's a company that makes organic, natural flavorings like India Tree or certain that I have to make sure that are nut-free and that are safe. So I start with those basic things. But when our middle son was really young, we used to tell people, kind of joking at first and then realizing he's allergic to artificial colors. We would give our kids, it'd be Halloween or something, and they would literally get angry and be bouncing off the walls and go nuts So we stopped giving them artificial colors way before we stopped doing gluten, just because we didn't think it was good. And doing the research and knowing how it affects the brain, and I didn't want to put that in our bodies or our children's bodies. So I've been anti-artificial anything forever. So when we opened the bakery, I knew, it'd be a lot easier if I could use blue dye or red dye or sprinkles and make it super colorful and fun. But like I said, if I can reduce blueberries, or I make a homemade raspberry compote, and that's what gets folded into the raspberry lemon muffins, and everything just super natural, or with a little bit of help from the natural sprinkles for fun colors. But it's not vibrant, but it's still fun.
But when you look at, like, one of the best sellers is like the bundt cakes that she makes, and if you're going to get a raspberry bundt cake, when you pick that thing up, you see chunks of raspberry just swirled into it. And when you show it to people, you're like, I always do this. I'm like, look at that. And they're like, oh, it looks so good. But because you see it, it's real. It's food. It's not some orange dust sprinkled on a corn chip. And, it's real food.
You talked about putting love into everything. And that's how, I've even said before, so I'm not in the right space to make this right now because I need to put love into it. I need to get out of this, because that's how it is. Everything is handmade with love, with care, and handmade jams. And we make turnovers occasionally, and whatever comes to mind that is fun, that is delicious, and whatever we feel like making.
We've used those words a lot, actually, when people are like, how do you make these soft pretzels? How are these gluten-free?
Magic and love.
Love and magic, yeah.
And we did a whole motivational Monday on it, actually, and love through food. And but it is a difference. And I've been in the food industry long enough to know the difference in people that actually really care about their food when they come to us to co-package food versus people that are just trying to make a quick buck. And not only do I notice the difference, but customers knows the difference. The end eaters, or whatever I was going to say, end users, but technically they're consuming, and consumers, they do know a difference. And I think that's part of your guys' success, because I can see how much you care about what you're doing, and obviously it's impacted your family, so all the more. So that being said, what's your motivation? Obviously running a business is not great, and both of you now being in the business, what inspires you guys? What motivates you to keep coming into the office every day, or bakery every day? And so how do you, what is it? What drives you guys?
It's really hard work. It's probably one of the hardest things I've ever done. But like you said, we love it. We're passionate. He kind of got dragged into it, and he knows it's important and passionate about it as well. But it really is the happy faces that we see, the tears, the people that literally, like, they'll ask 50 questions. Are you sure this is gluten-free? And what is there, sesame? Is there whatever? And for us to be able to say, this is a safe environment for you and your family, and to create an experience when people walk in the door, like Jeremy said, hopefully we can greet you by name. We can, tailor serve you so that you feel comfortable and things are safe to have fun and eat yummy food for your family. Those tears of joy, or those appreciative words, make it all worth it. And our kids are really, I think they're kind of impressed that we opened this business and that it's successful and it's fun, and they know how hard we work and how important it is to all of us.
Well, I wanted to ask you a question a little bit on the personal side. So, obviously this is how your bakery is, and I'm presuming it's how your house is. So I'm presuming you at home, you eat very healthy and clean and keep gluten out of your house as well. Right. Is that fair to say? Yeah. And so just curious, have you thought at all about doing like pastas and stuff that are a dry product? Do you make them for yourselves at home, or?
I used to cook a lot more before I opened the bakery.
I'm sure.
And now
right?
sometimes it's a whole food rotisserie chicken that, this is dinner. Right. We have to, it's that whole, how much time and effort is going to go into it. There's certain things, we used to make handmade tortillas and griddle, cut them, grill them by hand, and realize that those 2 hours sold out in 5 minutes. So there's certain things that just
don't make sense.
Like things like pasta. I'd love to make other things, but sometimes we just can't.
It doesn't make sense.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense to put that much time and effort into certain things. Yeah, to be able to mass produce it.
That makes sense, right? Because you think of like a box of pasta, whatever, you can sell a muffin for the same price as an entire box of pasta.
Right, and now, when I started out, I was making 6 bagels at a time, or we were making, I was making a dozen cupcakes at a time. And now with my big ovens, I've had to, that was part of the learning curve, was increasing the recipes and doing it by weights and figuring out all the numbers. And can I make 48 muffins at one time? That makes a lot more sense than me making 6.
Right.
You have to use my time wisely, so I'm not there, in the beginning we were there for 12, 14 hours a day. And now we've got it more streamlined and we're doing a little bit better.
We have a history of eating clean.
Right.
That comes from our background in nutrition, which is pretty
Right.
extensive. So we have freezers full of pastured bison or pig or lamb. We eat a lot of vegetables and, not as much grains, if you will.
Right.
And that's
Grains or
what our
sugars.
sugars, yeah. And so when you say, the family, how do they deal with it? And the kids are like, "Can I have these Doritos?"
Yeah.
No, they're full of excitotoxins.
Right,
You
they
can't
have
have
MSG in them. They're going to make your brain crazy. So, we try to always have good alternatives, but yes, we eat very clean in the house, and they get lots of treats from the bakery. Every day we'll bring them something new from the bakery.
I want to touch upon that a little bit. And clean is obviously clean label and no artificial ingredients. And grains, it's one of the things that we find, and at least as we're in the food business, grains also, they're hidden sugars and complex carbs and things that don't do well for your body and your gut especially, and things like that. So I want to touch upon that for the audience, but I also want to touch upon artificial ingredients as a whole. And a lot of artificial ingredients are there to just extend shelf life. They don't add any benefit to the food other than making it live longer. And I know there's studies on this. You bury a human body that has eaten a lot of artificial ingredients, they decay. It takes them longer to decay and naturally go into the ground, and it's kind of a scary thing. I know that's one of the things I always remember. Like, when I'm dead, don't let my body keep preserving because I ate a bunch of artificial ingredients. And one of the things that we're seeing in our business side, because I think what you're doing is so important, the audience needs to know that artificial ingredients aren't necessary. You look at the back of the label, we don't need to eat that food. The reason it's there is because that company's trying to profit through extending shelf life, and that's a money-based thing. That's not a health, human consumption, better my diet thing. And a lot of times what people don't know is that the longer you extend shelf life, the actual nutritional value of food actually decreases. It does decrease. And so your nutritional labels on your food, if that food's not fresh, it often is that nutritional label was done when the food was first cooked or first picked off the tree or first killed as an animal. So the longer that it's out, minus freezing, because freezing can sustain that or stabilize it, that you lose nutritional value. So a lot of what we're seeing in this country is hunger and all that and people consuming more. Well, it's kind of eating healthy problem for sure, but really what it is we're not getting the nutrients we need from our food, and we're putting crap in the food, and therefore we're still hungry because our body's still yearning for the nutrition, not for the food. And that's where we sort of, I'm hungry. Well, why are you hungry? Are you not getting the nutrients you need out of the food, the vitamins, the minerals, the things like that? And so we consume more, especially as Americans. And people are like, Europeans, it's because they walk all the time that they're in better shape, or they, but really it's because they buy their food more often. They're at the grocery store every day. They're buying fresher products. They don't process the foods the way we do. They don't use artificial ingredients the way we do. And so, milk aside, which is a little weird but milk's shelf stable, but still, it's one of those things that if we want to be better as human beings and live longer and have healthier lives, you got to minus the artificial ingredients out of your food because it's not good for us. And a lot of it is there are natural ways to extend shelf life. And I'll let Deborah talk a little bit about it because I want the high pressure processing, just so the audience is educated on the new thing that's coming out, just because I think it's important that we're talking about it.
I don't know if it would work for baked goods, but
no, I don't think so.
But high pressure processing, what it is it's technology, and basically you take your finished product, and then you put it, and it's packaged, and you put it into this vessel that then water comes into it, and 87,000 psi of pressure is put upon this food, and what it does is it interrupts the growth of pathogens. And so it is a way to extend your shelf life without putting any preservatives in. So you see it a lot in the products that you see on the periphery of the grocery store. And there's a cost to it. There's tolling stations where people bring products in, whether it's meats, whether it's, cold pressed juices, whatnot, and they put it through these machines and they pay per pound depending on the product and whatnot. And anyway, and then that extends their shelf life. And so for a lot of companies, that's an important thing. And I wonder if it would work for you guys. Although, you have a lot of things in your food that probably doesn't grow a pathogen, and it might become stale prior to any risk of a health type of thing. Is that, I would imagine, is your scenario?
Well, we've been saying for 20 years, if you can't read it, don't eat it. So if you're looking at the back of a label and you cannot read the ingredients, it should not go into your body. So in our ingredients, you're going to be able to read everything. There's no potassium bromate, there's no EDTA, there's no MSG, and that's why we use the freezer model. We make it, and people say, when was this made? I say, well, it was made 2 days ago and immediately put in the freezer, so it's as fresh as can be. Just take it out. Or I made it this morning. I made it an hour ago and I just put it into the bakery case. So yeah, artificial, we don't use anything artificial, and you're right, it's preserving the bodies, and we don't want to do that. We just want to serve the freshest ingredients, and that's what we do at home too. We don't want anything artificial at our house either.
So I wanted to switch gears a little bit, because you guys mentioned earlier that you had someone who helps you with your social media, but I'm also curious, do you have other employees? And because that's definitely a tricky one when you get into having employees and, finding people, and what are kind of your criteria when you look at bringing people in, all of that. So
funny you bring that up. We're currently in the process of going through, finding new people. We think we found a really good employee. We only have 2 employees, 2 part-time employees, right? And so one, Cecilia, is great. She's leaving. She's moving on to the next phase of our life, going to start a family. And Christine, who is our other employee, part-time, because she also has young kids. And although she has the capacity to grow into, being more responsible as far as taking duties away from us, she doesn't have the life space right now for that. And so we have a new employee that we're hoping that we can bring along into sort of a growth position quickly, that she could, someday, if somebody was in there that we felt good about while we were sleeping and they were making, something with love and magic in it, that'd be a short-term goal.
But there's that whole tricky thing about being as passionate as we are, and in the bakery, there are eggs in the bakery, but we make a lot of egg-free products. So I have a whole system. Everything that's purple never touches eggs or dairy.
Right.
So employees have to know that. So I do the egg-free cooking because I don't want anything to ever get cross-contaminated. You have to make sure that the labels are on properly, that, when we label our products, or things aren't touching each other. We have a whole side of a freezer that never has egg in it. So it's a whole system that I kind of watch over, both of us, to make sure that it gets done properly. So that's that whole trust issue of us not being there and making sure that things get done well. But we love our employees. I don't know how we did it in the beginning without them, because they make our lives a lot easier.
Right.
And we, are constantly looking for the right fit.
Well, and employees are tricky, right? Because on one side, it's like there are certain things we don't like to do in our jobs, and for everyone, it's different, right? Like some people love doing accounting, other people hate it. And so, it's like, do you get rid of the things you don't like, or do you get rid of the things that are affecting your timeline? And with every person that you bring in, it's one taking away from your bottom line. And so there's a balancing act of what can we afford to do? And, so it's definitely, and then you guys have a whole nother added step to the whole thing in terms of a quality thing. I mean, I guess everyone has a quality issue, as to what their employees are bringing to the table and whatnot. But yours is definitely shown through every bite, if something didn't go right. And it is a complete science. I mean, things can go south pretty quickly in baking. So, especially if they're on the production floor, that's a challenge.
Well, when we start giving more responsibilities out, and then all of a sudden there's a dry mix, for whatever, pretzels, and the pretzels aren't coming out, and then we have to trace it back. It's the whole dry mix, and they have to fix that. But another dynamic that you don't think about until you're in it, we're in a 950 square foot facility. It's tight.
Yeah, it's compact.
And, so we've done it so much that when she goes right, I go left, and you have to get this flow.
Right.
And when things are flowing, it's awesome. And when things aren't flowing, it's not that great.
That's why there has to be a personality fit as well. Right. You have to like each other, because we spend a lot of time in a small space on top of each other, putting things away, or cleaning, or labeling, or baking, or whatever it is. So it's an interesting dynamic.
Yeah, you mentioned dry mix, and I'm really glad you said that, because I was wanting to ask you that as well in terms of a product line. Have you guys thought about doing dry mixes where people can just add whatever ingredients and you sell that? Because that's definitely something easier to ship and get your product nationwide. But have you considered that avenue?
When I first started, I did dry mixes. I did,
really?
A cookie mix or whatever, and then it just got tricky for if you use a dry mix and you add 2 tablespoons extra milk, and then it's runny, and then that product turns out badly, then it reflects on me. It's because it is a science. But like Jeremy said too, if it's cloudy that day, or if it's whatever, if the barometric pressures change, I feel like the recipe changes. And because I'm such a control freak, I like everything to be actually perfect.
Okay.
So it's definitely not out of the realm of possibility for dry. I sell my basic, we call it my AF blend, my allergy-free blend, to some people. But I used to sell a ton of different dry mixes.
So what's the blend? So you can use it for making a roll or making a pancake or that type of thing?
It's just the basic, as if you'd go and just get a basic gluten-free flour, King Arthur or Namaste,
right,
or all these different companies that have the gluten-free blend. So we just have it's our basic blend, and I add xanthan, so there's a binder in it, but then you would use that and then use your muffin recipe or whatever you have at home.
I see. Yeah, and then that way people can kind of work from there. They have their flour substitute to use. Mm-hmm. And so what were the ingredients you guys use in it?
So it's sorghum, brown rice, sweet rice, and tapioca is our base.
Okay.
And then I have a bunch of dry mixes that we use just to make life easier. I didn't have them at first, and then I've realized if I can have my cupcake mixes and my pretzel mix and my bread mix all ready to go, we probably have 15 or 20 different dry mixes at the bakery that I start with my base and I know what's in it. So all those dry mixes have, maybe some has a little potato starch or a little millet flour or certain things that I needed to add to give the right texture to the right product.
Yeah. And so you probably never use like an almond flour since you're nut-free, right?
Yeah. We get a lot of requests for keto or paleo, and I don't use almond flour. Coconut flour can be tricky because a lot of it's contaminated. Mm-hmm. So I'm experimenting with cassava to make, so I have a cassava flour grain-free brownie right now.
We came across cassava because we had someone wanting to make a Brazilian cheese bread. And so I don't know if you've ever had that, but have you? Yeah. And so anyway, we were talking to a client about it, and I didn't know what cassava was prior. And
So that's what I'm trying to use that to create products to have a grain-free, lower. I use coconut sugar, cassava, that kind of thing to make it a lower sugar paleo product.
But it is tougher, like you were alluding to before, in your facilities to be gluten-free certified, right? So to source every product that we get, it's tough to be a nut-free, a gluten-free.
So tell us about that a little bit, because procurement, it's a major part of any food business, and I don't think people understand the amount of time and effort that has to go in procurement and making sure ingredients are to the quality and standard that you want, let alone the allergy now sensitivity that you guys are talking about. So how do you go about that?
It's a lot of research. I wear a lot of different hats, and that was part of I'd research this company and say, it's in the same facility or the same line as, tree nuts or whatever. So I'd have to get rid of that. And I found some safe brands. So right now, that's a lot of the tricky part is the inventory. We use Dawn Foods to source some, but they don't have safe products in certain lines. So then I have to go to 3 or 4 different companies to order different things. So that's constantly staying on top of, we're out of bags, or we're out of certain sorghum flour, or we're out of this sugar, between a restaurant source kind of place and 3 or 4 different companies. Trying to balance all of what we're out of and where we need to order it from is also tricky. But it was a lot of research on, is this actually a safe product? Can I actually have this in the bakery and still it be safe?
So when you did the soda bread, for example, you come up with it, St. Patrick's Day is coming, you've got to go find ingredients then that you don't normally carry in. So how are you just make sure that whatever you're sourcing, you already have, whatever you're going to make for that holiday, you already have in-house?
Right. So when we get bags of flour are 50-pound bags of flour. That's my CrossFit workout. I call it bakery CrossFit at the bakery.
I like it.
So I'm lifting 50-pound bags of flour, and we're using, I know which flours I have, and I probably have 10 different kinds of flours, or, flax meal, or certain things that would go in, and I just look at a recipe and I'll know if I have it. So usually I have the ingredients, and it's all about different proportions. 1 tablespoon extra of potato starch, or extra baking soda for the soda bread, or certain things like that I can create recipes from what I have in the bakery already.
Yeah, I think that's awesome because, one, in food, waste is a big problem. So sometimes you bring in stuff just to produce a special for the holidays, or in our case, a holiday meal, and then you're left with the waste. And that's lost. That's money down the tubes. I want to ask this question. So how did you choose Morrison in your location? Was it just the right place, or because, it's not as metropolitan as, say, Littleton or Denver, but obviously you're doing well there, so it's panned out well. But so how did you choose your location?
So we chose a different location. We chose a suite that was literally right next to my chiropractic office, suites that you can own. Once we started bringing engineers in, looking at we discovered quickly that building was not logistically set up to have floor drains or a
right.
rooftop unit on it. So some patients at the time owned a pretty iconic sub shop in Colorado. It's called Tommy's Subs. And they were like, you should move into our spot. We're moving down to the end of this little strip mall. And they're doubling in size. And I went over and looked at it, and it was we just had to gut it. It's been a sub shop for 30 years. So we just ripped everything out and built it up as our bakery. And it's a surprisingly busy little area. When you say Morrison, like, you're a Colorado guy, so you think of like the town of Morrison.
Right.
But we're, right off the highway, easy on, easy off. And I don't know, it's worked out great. It's a little small at this point. When we're running around pre-Christmas, and I hear her say out loud 5 times, "We need more ovens." But as far as the look, it's pretty, right? You look out your front windows, and you've got the vistas of the hogbacks right there. It's gorgeous. Right. So and it's really close to our house, right? It's a 13-minute commute.
Oh, that's
15
nice.
if there's traffic.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah, that
extra 2 minutes.
Thing was, we have our kids are now 11, 13, and 15, so they're still. They're still young, and I had to I couldn't be 45 minutes away, or both of us, and say, someone needs to be picked up at school, because my family is my priority first.
Right.
So we wanted it somewhere close. So I kind of had I was hoping a 15 to 20 minute vicinity, and this it just kind of fell in our lap, and it's really a great location for us.
Yeah. My mom says there are no accidents.
Right? Yeah.
Well, and that's funny, and just as a side note, you guys grew up on the East Coast as well. You can't go anywhere on the East Coast without tripping over a major metropolitan city. Like, it's literally 2 hours, maybe even less, 45 minutes in any direction. You're tripping over a huge city. In Colorado, it's Denver, and I don't even know which direction's the next biggest city. So it's kind of an interesting thing. But I love Morrison because it's kind of this small, unique town in some ways. And I'd never been there. The first time I was there, I think it was the Blue Moose. Wasn't that? Mm-hmm. And but it's really what you think America should be. But growing up on the East Coast, we just don't have that as much anymore. The small towns, maybe in parts of Pennsylvania and New Jersey and things like that. And in D.C., you kind of have your small, iconic towns like Morrison, but it's more like I feel like you trip over a city everywhere you go. And I grew up on a farm, so I don't particularly like cities that much, although I lived in New York City for 4 years, which is why when you said the bagel thing, if you guys were in New Jersey, pizza crust and bagels coming out of New York City are the best in the world, and there's just nothing like it. So if it's something good and it's gluten-free and it meets all the allergies, I'm like, we're definitely going, because we may have found something that I can enjoy here as well.
Our pizza crusts are really awesome too.
You do have pizza crust?
We do.
Oh my gosh! I was gonna ask, and then I'm like, maybe not.
And it's funny you mentioned the East Coast. So Jeremy grew up in New Jersey. I grew up in Alberta, Canada. Mm-hmm. We lived out in New Jersey for a while. And when we opened the bakery, when we lived in New Jersey, there's a bakery on every corner, right. And people line up in the morning. You get your stuff, and when they sell out, they sell out. So that's how we kind of designed our bakery here. That with cinnamon rolls, we don't make cinnamon rolls all day on Saturday. I get there at 4. I make my giant batch of cinnamon rolls, and when we sell out, we sell out. We're not, once again, a Safeway. So people will come in and it's disappointed that we're out of bread. And I said, well, it's 3 o'clock in the afternoon.
Right.
You know you need to get here at 10 if you want to get this bread, because we designed it after an East Coast bakery.
Yeah, and we were just with the girls, Deborah's daughters, in New York for a weekend, and like the bakeries and the cupcakes, and that's exactly the model. They bake them, and when they're out, they're out. That flavor's out. You can't get any more, but it's good that way. I mean, people aren't producing just for the sake of producing and then cutting costs, because then there's waste that they're wasting donuts at the end of every day. And so it's one of those things where I think I love what you're doing, and I love that model for sure. So my next question, because of it, is, so you have 3 kids. Do they work in the business at all, or they spend time with you guys on weekends?
That's funny. When we first opened, they were all helping. I was doing everything by myself, and then Jeremy would come in and see the giant pile of dishes, and so he started doing the dishes for me, and I would get 1 or 2 or 3 of the kids to come in and put stickers on packages or whatever it was, and then Jeremy transitioned more and more. And then as we got other employees and our kids are really busy, they're not as much. But my son came in the other day, my 15-year-old, and he said, you know what, this is a really cool place to work. Can I work here in the summer? So I think that's the plan, is to try to get them in the bakery more and more. We're close enough. We can get them there to even put in a couple hours and learn how to work hard and learn the business and learn, that it takes a lot of hard work to make things happen.
I think it's a great experience. I mean, I grew up in an entrepreneurial family, just farms, and Deborah as well, and I don't think there's any experience like it, and work ethic and seeing your parents and modeling for your kids in that way. I mean, it's not something they get in school, that's for sure. And so having that real life experience, I think, is huge. And especially as they go into college, no matter what they go into, they have that to reflect on, which is a great base for education. I mean, I think it goes a long way, particularly if they want to go into business or anything like that, that having the work experience as a family is amazing. The other part I want to touch on is, is that maybe part of what your goal is? Is it to the bakery and maybe pass it on to your kids if that's something they want to do? Have you guys talked about that? I mean, because we hear a lot of that on the podcast. I just wonder if there's maybe dreams of that as well, or any of them have really taken interest in baking. Or
I'm really surprised at this point that none of our children have expressed an interest like to go into culinary school. I mean, we are always just, it's cooking. That's all we do is, cook and prepare stuff, and then we own this business. So I don't know, it's a little early, I think, to project which path they'll take. If they had interest in it, I certainly am interested in making them work. I'm kind of a dinosaur like that. I think
it's a good quality for sure.
Yeah. So if he wants to work and wash some dishes and learn, how to earn a buck, I'm all about that.
I've thought about it just briefly. Like, wouldn't it be cool if we could pass down the bakery and they could keep it running? And I don't know. That like you said, they're young, and we don't know which path we're going to take, so we don't know yet.
And so, do either one of you? I mean, obviously, you're entrepreneurs and owning your own chiropractic practice, but do either one of you guys come from an entrepreneurial background and families and things like that?
Yeah,
both of us,
we
actually.
Both do.
Yeah, our dads both have started several businesses. Been successful in their businesses, and I've always seen hard work and long hours, and so has Jeremy.
Yeah, her father was in oil and gas up in Alberta. My father, ran an industrial construction company. That's where I grew up. When I was my oldest son's age, I was in, working in furnaces and foundries, and it was awful.
It was awful.
So then you go from that.
See, don't complain about being a baker. You could be in a foundry.
You'd be a chiropractor for 20 years, and you said that's an entrepreneur. Most people don't think about that, and that was probably the biggest surprise to me, was how hard you had to work at the business of being a chiropractor, to run that business, to make it successful. That was the patient care. That was easy. That was just passion and heart for me, and I love to learn new things that help people get better. But the part of running the business part of it all the time for 20 years, that was hard. So then you go into the bakery, like I said, and open up you just say, hey, we're open today, and you hang a shingle, and people just start showing up. You're like, wow, this is pretty cool.
Well, because there's so many chiropractors out there.
Right.
But we really are a unique niche. Like, how many gluten-free, nut-free, 99% dairy-free, and 50% egg-free bakeries are there around? And we really take pride in that.
Well, one, there aren't many, and of the ones that there are, not all of them are very good. You know, like there definitely are products. I mean, we go to Mod Market a lot just because we're going through DIA. Well, one, I like Mod Market, but two, they're at DIA and Concourse B. So we go there a lot, and Justin will get the gluten-free bread with his sandwiches, and it's horrible. It falls apart. Like, you just can't eat the sandwich. And I'm always
Come try our bread.
Right, yeah. And so to find someone who actually has a good bread, and like when you're sitting here, I'm like, you guys need to sell the Mod Market. Like, that just needs to happen.
It's one of those things where you start, because the gluten-free stuff is so bad in some of the places we travel, or the bagels, that you end up just going bunless or breadless, and so you become used to it. And so I'm definitely interested in trying it for sure. I love that.
I know. I'm thinking if you guys are open
so
on our way, we drop the dog off on our way, and so we actually go 470. So we might just zip off the highway if you guys are still open.
And get breakfast there instead of the airport.
So we went to Mexico for a family vacation, and we went to this restaurant, and they always say they have gluten-free bread. So we actually ended up doing a video of it, because you're right. Sometimes you need to go bunless. I picked up the bread and I was going to butter it, and it literally crumbled into pieces. And I said, I'm not eating that. That's disgusting.
Can't eat it.
And especially when we're used to our own products,
right?
Where hopefully you can't tell the difference whether it has gluten or not. So yeah, it was gross.
And it's a disservice, in my opinion, to gluten-free. Like, you're creating this terrible image of gluten-free bread and gluten-free products, or soy-free or nut-free products, and you're painting people's image that this is what it is, and it doesn't need to be that way. It doesn't have to be that way. Yeah. It's just people cutting corners.
Well, it's certainly a lot better than it used to be.
Yeah.
Right? There's a lot more choices, and there's some higher quality stuff. We revel in the compliment, it's the best I ever had, gluten or no gluten. We love when people say that. That's my favorite, when people come in that have no food allergies, and then they're skeptical, and then they come back.
And pick it anyway, yeah.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And it is amazing to me that the stuff on the shelves that we'll buy occasionally if we're if we're on vacation or whatever, and I can't believe this made it to a grocery store shelf. This is awful.
Right.
Yeah, we were, like she said, we were in this fancy French restaurant, and they came around with a beautiful bread selection, 5 or 6 different kinds of breads, none of them gluten-free. And then we said, do you have any gluten-free bread? And they brought us like a piece of white toast or something that was just awful. And so, if you come to our place and you're going to have some sort of red sauce or something, and you can get a nice, airy piece of focaccia bread, beautifully seasoned with rosemary and olive oil and salt. I mean, some of the stuff we put out is pretty darn good.
Yeah, and just to clarify,
the audience should see his smile right now. You can see the joy. He's imagining eating it.
I know, and that's great, because a lot of people think of bakeries as just desserts, and so having breads and pizzas, pizza crusts, and different variations and brownies and the whole spectrum. I think people get locked up in the Panera bread bakeries and what they have, and while there's bread and stuff there, it's just a certain style product. But having the options that you guys have in the seasonality, I think, is great. So again, if you're in Morrison or in Colorado, go try out their restaurant, Allergy Free Baking Company. And is that what the name is on the building as well, and how they can find you?
There's a giant Home Depot right on the corner of C470 and Quincy, and we're just in the strip mall right beside it.
So I definitely want to do that. And my last question as we start to wrap things up, the hardest probable question is, what are the failures you guys have had along the way that have taught you the most or led to your success, or should I say opportunities for growth, not failures?
Right. Well, there's so many little failures. Like, I've thrown out tons of product with, these cookies didn't work, or why didn't these bagels work? Or, we've talked about, we didn't realize we were going to grow so fast. So how to balance home life and, work life. It's all been very tricky. What else do you have?
I don't know, every day brings a different failure. That's how you, right? Nobody grows
or
and
opportunity
learns.
for growth.
Yeah, nobody grows and learns when everything's just going rosy. It's when you fall down and you get back up and get your Rocky on.
Yeah.
Get your Rocky.
Or
I know
even planning,
Big fan of Rocky over
I
here.
did a whole episode on Rocky Balboa.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
My favorite.
planning for inventory or planning for, it'll be a holiday and we had no idea we were going to have a line out the door for 2 hours and we were not prepared and we ran out of cinnamon rolls in 20 minutes or whatever it is. Then we try to learn from that, use it for the next holiday or for the next, whatever we need to do that we learned, made a mistake the first time.
You referenced before going back and, do you make a list for last Easter and so that, this did really well. Up until, just a short time ago, everything was the first time.
Right.
So we had it's going to be Christmas. Okay, well, we've never done this before.
Wonder
Let's
if
see how
anybody
this
will
will
show
go. Yeah.
Right.
So that's been a learning curve. But we're getting better.
Yeah.
What are your most popular holidays then so far? I mean, it's only been one round, but where has it been like, oh man, this has been amazing for a holiday push? Because I would think baked goods are more popular during the holidays, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, so we've learned now in just under 2 years that any holiday is going to create chaos. Doesn't matter if it's Mother's Day or Arbor Day. People go crazy at bakeries for holidays.
Yeah.
So Christmas
Thanksgiving
was insane. Thanksgiving. At Christmas we have to have a lot of cinnamon rolls, a lot of sugar cookie and gingerbread men cutouts. It's amazing. You don't think about it unless you're affected. Like, my kid's never done a gingerbread man because there is no gluten,
Right.
dairy free. Thanksgiving time,
Dinner rolls,
Cinnamon
cinnamon roll.
One of the problems of the small bakery where we all make everything ourselves is pies. Pies are challenging. Pies are challenging to roll out every crust, and so we just had 2 people rolling out crusts for their whole shift. So other things go away, right? You can't make as much pumpkin crunch muffins when you have to do 500 pie shells. So those are challenges, but Easter is a big holiday. St. Patty's Day, the soda bread we didn't do that last year because she couldn't get the recipe right. Everybody else liked her recipe, but it wasn't good enough for her. So
The perfectionist.
yeah.
But that's why everything's so good.
And we found that in a bakery, after Christmas, after New Year, it's kind of slow. Everything slows down. I think just in general that happens in business, but the bakery, like the first year when we sat there in January after being so crazy busy, and we're like, where is everybody? What's going on here? And so we realized, you know what? Next year, this is when we should go on vacation with the family.
Perfect.
Because and so we're figuring things out like that.
Yeah, that's what we do now as well. It's between Christmas and New Year's is the best time to get out of town in the food business, because while Christmas is so popular and New Year's is kind of a foodie thing, there's this weird lull. Just Thanksgiving's popular, then there's this weird lull, and then there's Christmas, weird lull, through kind of a pickup at New Year's, but then there's a weird lull until about the second week of January or something for us, of Martin Luther King Day, and then all of a sudden things start picking back up. But it is an interesting trend to anyone who knows they're in. You think the holidays and people being on vacation, their families and all that would be a popular time, but people running around and they're going on vacation and they got the kids home and kids want home cooked meals because they're in college, and it creates this weird pattern of everything. So I think that's pretty cool that you touched upon it. We never talked about it before, but there are trends that you need to pay attention to. So, and I mean, as you get more into business, I assume you know now and you adjust for time periods, and there's a little bit of predictability on what days to do what and what time of years to do what, and that's going to be popular, so you don't actually have so much waste in the baking.
We don't have a lot of waste.
We have very little waste. It either comes home or I, give it to a friend or whatever it is. But even, we've also learned for staffing, like we need extra staff for all of November and all of December, and then for January, February, it's slow, so we don't. But if we have extra staff in those crazy months, it makes our lives a lot easier.
How about Valentine's Day? Is that a popular one?
Yes.
I'm just curious because I know flowers.
Everything pink I can think of. I put pink frosting on, all of a sudden it's cherry scones and it's pink frosted bundt cakes, and lots of fun cupcakes, lots of different fun stuff.
Well, you guys should really
Can't
thank
wait to
Hallmark
see.
for creating all those holidays for you guys and making them so big, so they could sell cards. Yeah, I guess that's. I mean, I'm told that's how it all started, is pushing cards. But it is become, holidays are becoming such a big deal in this country for every reason, and celebrating and reasons to get together. So I love that we talked about it a little bit on this episode for sure. Well, I want to thank you guys for coming on the podcast and driving into our garage studio / gym. And if you guys have, anyone in the audience is curious about Allergy-Free Baking Company, I really recommend looking it up online on social media, see what they're doing. They don't do an online business, but maybe we'll help promote that if enough of you guys out there take interest. But go out there, look what they're doing. I think what they're doing is extremely unique in that the quality of their products are amazing, and obviously they're doing it better than what everyone out there is used to. So if you've tried gluten-free products and not sure about what they are, try theirs and see what happens. I mean, it sounds to me like they're doing well and selling out, so they're doing something right, and obviously people are enjoying it. So Deborah and I are definitely going to go try it, and probably going to become customers based on my own allergy. So get out there, try it, support them. They came out here, they volunteered their time. So share this episode to anyone you know who is on a gluten-free diet or has any food allergies to nuts or anything like that. Share this with them, help them live a better lifestyle so they can have better food in their life, particularly baked goods and pizza crust and bread, and I'm drooling just thinking about it. So thank you guys again for being on the episode.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for having us.
And I'm Justin Bizzarro. I'm the host. You guys can reach me at justin.bizzarro@gmail.com. That's Bizzarro. If you're interested in being on the podcast or you just have questions for the people that are on here, thank you again, Deborah, for always being my co-host. And Deborah's pretty amazing questions. She's the brains behind it, so anyone doesn't know in the audience, I came up with the idea of the podcast, but she's the one who's really curious about the human condition and the questions and wanting to know people's stories. So she really tied it all together, so thank you.
You're welcome.
And if you guys, again, like what we're doing on the podcast, share it with your friends and family. Please, we're all doing this for free just to spread the word and help out people and help educate people in the food business, but also show everyone out there that there's opportunities there to live a better lifestyle through food, as we just did on this podcast. So thank you guys for listening in, and have a great day.